Well, hello, Precision Inventory Dealers. This is Rich Lighton. I thought it would be a good time to talk about commodities because it's coming up a lot lately with wholesale, and sometimes it's going to actually affect your decision on what you take in the wholesale, and that's where you really need commodities. We deal with it on our end constantly, week in, week out, month in, month out, getting the best of what is hard to get and avoiding the stuff that we don't want. But where it affects what you take in the wholesale, we thought it'd be important to go through. And for to standardize some of the communication on it, it's still incomplete, confusing sometimes, and even inaccurate. This is this current month's wholesale. So I want to quickly go through it. Hopefully in a few minutes, I can get you familiar with how to quickly read it, understand it, and especially where it might matter to you in making some of your decisions for wholesale. First of all, so this comes out in the wholesale email. They'll usually show it on the wholesale conference call when they do it. The commodities are regionally based. And so they're all specific. This is Denver region. I'm going to go through it because there's a few things that stand out. Bronco Sport, very consistent. We see commodities there. Actually, before I go through this, OTD lines, we're going to go through first, and then at the bottom, we'll get the non-OTD lines, which is F-Series, Transit, and Bronco. We'll cover how those work and how commodities work overall. But show you a couple things here. You're very familiar with the Bronco Sport commodity controls. They've been controlling Big Bend, Outer Banks, and Badlands, and it's listed as a max. So they round this to the hundredths. Probably don't need that, but anyway, 35, 40, and 22, that's 97%. Once you hit your limit on those, and then the rest have to be, and there's 0% freewheeling, so the remaining 3% have to be heritage. Not bad. It's been a lot worse. So that's good for this particular month. These entity controls, this is the part that we are limited to for the first week, what we call OTD week 1, but it's the body code selections we make the week after you do the wholesale. And there are not workarounds. If you earn 3 Big Bends, you can't get 4. And so just know that on this side, that's how it works. There are more workarounds on the quote dressing side and things like that. And I'll take you through a few other examples and how that works. So the entity controls, the body codes over here, the dressing controls over here. For example, they're saying they're limited to, in this case, it says must use. I believe that's an inaccurate comment. I believe just like over here, it's max available, black appearance package, 0%. The must use, though, might actually apply to the Big Bend with black diamond. They're actually trying to build more of these. So in fact, that probably is a must use on that 25%. The truth is that's the regional scheduling number. They're going to try to get 25% out of the region, but they don't have a way to enforce that, a mechanism within WebDo or any other way right now to force it. So they may try some other things, but if you don't put them in, you don't put them in. You're not going to schedule a black diamond package outside of them doing something else. And so with these, they're not, these aren't, that's a regional number on the right. That's the regional number, 25% black diamond. It's not what they're forcing the dealers to. Versus over here, these are dealer percentages that they are controlling it at the dealership level. Further down, let's go through, and I'm going to show you Expedition gets really tricky. First of all, on the body code side, there's just one there, but it's significant. No actives again for this month. That's the old XLT, forcing you into, there's no limited in the 25 model year. The limiteds are now the base platinum, right? And so no XLT, and then so you're either platinum, King Ranch, or Tremor. Well, this gets really hairy over here. They're going through all these details, and I'll narrow it down because we've done the research on it. Right here, this Platinum Elite 20-inch wheel, that's the 64R wheel. That's the base wheel on that, what essentially last year's limited. So they're forcing you into one of the 4 packages on the Platinum. And there's the Platinum Ultimate, which is, the ultimate, the 24-inch wheel package. There's the 2 stealth packages, so loaded up black. And then the other one is the driver's package. And that they're also saying this particular wheel is limited to 0%. We've looked that up, wheel up. They haven't done a good job explaining it all, because ultimately the truth is you can't get the base with, the base, which is, so you have to get one of the 4 packages. And then they're saying you can't get this package. You have to get one of the 3 remaining packages with your stealth or the Platinum Ultimate. So it's a high end truck. It's not a value truck. Of all things, Expedition, not exactly a value unit, but you can't get the active and you can't get kind of that base platinum. So it's either Tremor, King Ranch, or these loaded up platinums on Expedition. Furthermore, I'm going to go into it a little bit and look at Maverick because it's a particularly tricky one in the Denver region, and really any region that does all-wheel drive Mavericks. You can see down here they're limiting the gas engine to 52% in Denver. Well, you might otherwise think, well, I'll just build my all-wheel drives in hybrids. No, all all-wheel drives are shut down for this month. So it doesn't say it explicitly here, but that means dealers have to take 48% front-wheel drive hybrids in the Denver region, and similar numbers around the country in these all-wheel drive type markets. So that's a significant one. We try to point these out when we send out the wholesale notes. In our the notes are our email on our calculations in the actual file itself, and we try to call those out in the wholesale email. So make sure you're looking for those. We're going to try to highlight those, but this is another way for you to kind of get familiar with it. You can see over here on the right, this is kind of doesn't line up with how it should. First of all, the hybrid engine is an entity selection. So why is it over here on the right? We don't know. And then it does, listing 82% also doesn't line up, because if you're forced into using 82% hybrid, there's only 18% 2.0s, and the 2.0 here is listed at 52%. So that doesn't quite align. So we're asking Ford for some clarification on that. But just so I wouldn't worry much about this. We're confident we can get the 52% all-wheel drive gas engines. On Mach-E, you're limited to 13% sport appearance package right here. Ford isn't limiting or forcing you on that 13%. Back to when I was saying it's not controlled at the dealership level. That's what they're going to schedule for the region. If no dealers signed up for them, one dealer could take 100% sport appearance. So that just try to explain that that's how it works. That's just how many they're going to schedule, but they're not limiting any particular dealer to the numbers when it comes to these percentages on the right, on the dressing numbers. And that's how it works on the OTD lines, the non-OTD lines overall, like the F series. There's no forcing right now, and we haven't for the last few years had too much forcing. At the end of the model year, it's typically the only time they end up forcing leftovers upon the dealers. With any leftover allocation that rolled that you didn't schedule, it rolled because either we were greedy, we wanted the good stuff, or we just didn't want some of the ugly stuff that was available to us. That's when they can force you at the end of the model year. But last few years they haven't forced it. And no, we're not trying to. We don't roll allocation on purpose ever. But certainly if all that's available to us is a super cab XLT, something we might not want, we're not going to take it. But as it gets close to the end of the model year, we do get more aggressive to get scheduled out, because you don't want to be left with a whole bunch of allocation left over, and then they do force whatever super cab XLTs or whatever it might be on you. But I wanted to explain some of these things here. They list the 2.7, the 3.5, and the 5.0 at those percentages, 35, 25, 22. Those are not dealership controls. If no dealers, literally you could say, I'm going to take only 3.5 EcoBoost. You might only schedule 25%. And then all your allocation would roll to the next month, but you could get the 100% for you. You just wouldn't get many units, Bill. But you could still get 40% there. These numbers are, again, the number that the region is limited to. It's not what the dealership in particular is limited to. And you could get more or less depending on what other dealers are trying to get and what you're trying to get, on any of these. And that applies for all these lines from F-150 to Super Duty and Transit and Bronco. So I think I've covered most everything. If there's any questions, certainly hit us up. We just want to make sure you're familiar with how this sheet works and how it might affect you in some of your wholesale decisions.